What if I told you that the life you've always imagined, the version of you that is disciplined, purposeful, unstoppable, is not out of reach? What if the only thing standing between who you are right now and who you were always meant to become, is a single decision you keep postponing? Not talent. Not luck. Not connections or circumstances or the family you were born into. Just one decision. Stay with me, because what I am about to share with you in the next few minutes has the power to permanently alter the direction of your life. If you let it. The opening truth. Here is something that should disturb you. Right now, at this very moment, the vast majority of people walking this earth are living at a fraction of their actual capacity. Not because they are incapable. Not because life has been uniquely cruel to them. But because they made a quiet, unconscious, almost invisible agreement with mediocrity somewhere along the way. And the terrifying part? Most of them don't even know it happened. They wake up every morning inside a life that feels vaguely wrong, like a suit that almost fits but never quite does. They carry a persistent, low-grade dissatisfaction that they can never fully name. They scroll through other people's achievements with a mixture of admiration and ache, never fully understanding that what they are aching for is not someone else's life. They are aching for their own. The version of their life they gave up on. Welcome to one of the most important conversations you will have today. This is the Stoic path. And today, we are talking about the 1%. What the 1% actually means. Now before you think this is about money, let me stop you right there. The 1% I am talking about has nothing to do with your bank account. It has nothing to do with your job title, your social following, your zip code, or any external measure of success that the world uses to rank human beings against each other. The 1% I am talking about is the 1% of people who actually become who they were capable of becoming. Think about that. Out of every 100 people you know, colleagues, friends, family members, neighbors, statistically, only one of them will look back at the end of their life and say with honest conviction, I became who I was meant to be. I used what I was given. I did not leave my best life unlived. One person. The other 99. They will have spent their lives being almost disciplined. Almost courageous. Almost ready. Almost there. Almost. That word, almost, is the most expensive word in the human vocabulary. And most people spend their entire lives paying its price. The question is, which side of that equation will you be on? Short story, the two seeds. There were two seeds planted side by side in the same soil on the same day. They had the same sunlight. The same rain. The same earth beneath them. By every external measure, their circumstances were identical. But one seed did something the other did not. It pushed. It pushed through the resistance of the soil, the darkness, the weight, the discomfort of breaking open and reaching for something it had never seen but somehow knew was there. The other seed waited. It told itself the conditions weren't quite right yet. It told itself it would push tomorrow, when the soil felt less heavy, when the sun felt warmer, when it felt more ready. Tomorrow never came. And the first seed, the one that pushed through the darkness without waiting for perfect conditions, became a tree. A tree that provided shade for travelers. A tree whose roots stabilized the ground around it. A tree whose fruit fed generations it would never meet. The other seed? It remained exactly what it was. A seed with potential it never used. You were born a seed. Every single one of us was. The question is not whether you have potential. The question is whether you are willing to push through the soil. The first reason most people never become who they could be, comfort is the enemy in disguise. Let me tell you the first and most powerful reason why 99% of people never become who they are capable of becoming. It is not failure. It is not hardship. It is not even fear, though fear plays its role, and we will get to that. The number one reason most people never become who they could be is this. Comfort. Comfort is the most seductive trap ever designed. Because unlike failure, which is obvious and painful and demands a response, comfort is pleasant. Comfort feels earned. Comfort feels like you deserve it. Comfort whispers to you in the gentlest voice imaginable. You've worked hard enough. You've done enough for today. Rest. Relax. You can push tomorrow. And you believe it. Because it feels true. Because comfort has never lied to you about how it feels, only about what it costs. Here's what comfort costs you: your evolution. Every living thing in nature is either growing or dying. There is no third option. The tree that stops reaching for sunlight begins to wither. The muscle that stops being challenged begins to atrophy. The mind that stops being stretched begins to contract. And the person who chooses comfort over growth, day after day, decision after decision, does not stay the same. They shrink. Slowly. Imperceptibly. But irreversibly, unless something wakes them up. There was a man named Gerald. Gerald was talented, genuinely, remarkably talented. Everyone who knew him said so. His teachers said so. His friends said so. His family said so. Gerald had a gift for communication that could have taken him anywhere. But Gerald loved comfort more than he loved growth. He took the safe job instead of the challenging one. He stayed in the familiar city instead of moving toward the opportunity. He chose the easy conversation instead of the honest one. He picked the comfortable relationship over the growing one. And at 53 years old, Gerald sat across from his old college roommate, a man who had chosen differently at every one of those crossroads, and he felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was recognition. He recognized, for the first time with crystalline clarity, that every comfort he had chosen had been a subtraction. And the sum of all those subtractions was a life that was safe, predictable, functional. And almost entirely unlived. Comfort is not your friend. Comfort is your ceiling dressed as your couch. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said it in a way that has echoed through centuries: it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult. Read that again. The difficulty is not the obstacle to your becoming. Your unwillingness to face the difficulty, that is the obstacle. The 1% dare. Every single day. Not because they are fearless. But because they have decided that the discomfort of growth is a better companion than the slow suffocation of a comfortable, unlived life. The second reason, the tyranny of other people's opinions. There is a cage that most people live in their entire lives. It has no bars. No lock. No physical walls. You cannot see it from the outside. And yet it is one of the most effective prisons ever constructed. It is the cage of other people's opinions. From the earliest age, most of us are taught, explicitly and implicitly, to measure our worth through other people's eyes. To make decisions based not on what we believe is right, true, or aligned with our deepest nature, but based on what will be approved of, celebrated, and accepted by the people around us. And over time, this external validation becomes so deeply embedded in our decision-making process that we stop noticing it. We think we are making our own choices. We think we are living our own lives. But we are actually living a life curated for an audience that isn't even paying that much attention. Let me tell you about a young woman named Priya. Priya had a dream. A clear, specific, burning dream to become a documentary filmmaker. She wanted to tell the stories of people the world had forgotten. She could feel the purpose of it in her bones. But Priya came from a family with strong opinions and louder voices. And those voices told her, with complete confidence and genuine love, that filmmaking was not a real career. That she needed something stable. Something sensible. Something that would make them proud at dinner table conversations with relatives. And Priya, because she loved her family, and because she had been wired from childhood to seek their approval, listened. She became an accountant. A good one. A competent, respected, well-compensated accountant. And for 20 years she did her work diligently, professionally, and with a quiet grief that she kept so far below the surface that most days she could pretend it wasn't there. Until the day she attended a film festival with a friend, and saw a documentary about forgotten communities that made the entire audience weep. And Priya wept too. But not only for the people in the film. She wept for the films she never made. For the stories she never told. For the version of herself she had locked in a cage built from other people's comfort and other people's definitions of a good life. The Stoics had a name for this trap. Marcus Aurelius called it living according to doxa, popular opinion, the crowd's judgment, rather than according to logos, reason, truth, one's own deeply examined values. He wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." The 1% have learned, often through painful experience, to filter out the noise of other people's opinions and return, again and again, to the signal of their own truth. This does not mean they are arrogant. It does not mean they disregard wisdom or refuse counsel. It means they have learned to distinguish between the opinion of someone who knows them deeply and wants their genuine flourishing, and the opinion of someone who simply wants them to stay small enough to be comfortable. Those are very different things. And learning to tell the difference is one of the most important skills a human being can develop. The third reason, the identity trap. Here is something that most personal development conversations completely miss. The reason most people never become who they could be is not just about habits or discipline or morning routines. It is about identity. Specifically, the story they tell themselves about who they are. Because here is the brutal truth about human psychology. We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our identity. We consistently, reliably, almost mechanically behave in ways that are consistent with the story we believe about ourselves. If you believe, deep down, beneath all the surface-level affirmations and vision boards, that you are the kind of person who always quits when things get hard, you will quit when things get hard. If you believe that you are not the kind of person who is naturally disciplined, you will find 1,000 creative ways to be undisciplined. If you believe that success is for other people, people who are smarter, luckier, more connected, more deserving, then you will unconsciously sabotage every opportunity that brings success within reach. Because success would contradict the story. And the human mind will sacrifice almost anything to maintain a consistent story about itself. There was a boxer named Thomas who had genuine talent. His trainer saw it. Other fighters saw it. Anyone with eyes could see it. But Thomas had grown up in an environment where the men in his family didn't finish things. They started strong and faded. It was, in a strange and painful way, the family tradition. And so every time Thomas got close to something significant, a championship bout, a breakthrough moment, a chance to prove himself at the highest level, something would happen. An injury. A conflict with the trainer. A decision to take a fight he wasn't ready for. A night out before an important training session. His trainer finally sat him down and said something Thomas never forgot. He said, "Thomas, you're not losing because you're not good enough. You're losing because you don't believe you're allowed to win." Thomas stared at him. And in the silence that followed, he knew it was true. The identity trap is the deepest trap of all. Because you cannot outwork a broken self-concept. You cannot outdiscipline a story that says you are not the kind of person who succeeds. You cannot out-hustle a belief system that positions your own greatness as something foreign, dangerous, or undeserved. The 1% have done the identity work. They have examined the stories, the inherited ones, the culturally assigned ones, the ones born from early wounds and formative failures, and they have made a conscious, deliberate, ongoing choice to author a different narrative. Not a delusional one. Not a performative one. A true one. Because the truest thing about you is not the limitations you have accumulated. The truest thing about you is the potential you were born with, and your absolute, unconditional right to pursue it. We have covered powerful ground today. We have talked about comfort, the invisible ceiling that most people mistake for a couch. We have talked about the tyranny of other people's opinions, the cage with no bars that holds more prisoners than any physical institution ever built. And we have talked about the identity trap, the story you keep telling yourself that makes your own greatness feel likable. Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever had a moment, a quiet, unguarded, completely private moment, where you caught a glimpse of who you could actually be? Not who your parents wanted you to be. Not who your environment shaped you to become. Not the version of you that has learned to survive within the boundaries of other people's expectations. But you. The real one. The full one. The one that exists just beneath the surface of every compromise you have ever made. Most people catch that glimpse. The tragedy is that most people look away. They look away because that version of themselves is so much larger than the life they are currently living, that seeing it clearly becomes painful. It is easier to dismiss it as fantasy. It is safer to call it unrealistic. It is more comfortable to go back to the familiar smallness than to sit with the enormous, demanding, beautiful truth of what they are actually capable of. The 1% do not look away. They stare directly at that vision. They let it disturb them. They let it make them restless and dissatisfied and hungry in the best possible way. And then, they get to work. This is part 2. And this is where we talk about the work. The fourth reason most people never become who they could be. There is a place that exists only in the human imagination. It has no coordinates on any map. No climate, no geography, no physical address. And yet billions of people have staked their entire lives on eventually arriving there. It is called someday. Someday I will start eating better. Someday I will launch the business. Someday I will have that honest conversation. Someday I will write the book, pursue the dream, make the change, become the person. Someday. It is the most populated place on earth, and it does not exist. Because someday is not a day of the week. Someday is the story we tell ourselves to feel the emotional relief of intention without paying the actual price of action. It is the way we give ourselves permission to stay exactly where we are while maintaining the comfortable illusion that we are going somewhere. And the cruelest thing about someday is that it feels responsible. It feels like planning. It feels like wisdom. I'm not ready yet, I'm being strategic, I'm waiting for the right moment. But the right moment is a myth. Let me tell you about a man named Raymond. Raymond wanted to write a novel. He had wanted to write it for 22 years. He had the idea fully formed in his mind, characters, plot, themes, the opening sentence that he had refined in his head 1,000 times. It was a good story. A genuinely good story. But Raymond always had a reason why now wasn't the right time. When the kids were young, he was too busy. When the kids got older, he was too tired. When he retired, he finally had the time, but he had spent so many years telling himself he wasn't ready that he had actually convinced himself it was true. Raymond died at 71 with a perfect novel living entirely inside his head. A novel the world never got to read. A story that was born and died in one man's imagination because he kept waiting for a someday that always stayed just one more day away. The Stoics were merciless about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, with the urgency of a man who understood his own mortality deeply, confine yourself to the present. Not tomorrow. Not the better prepared future version of you. Not when conditions improve or circumstances align or the stars position themselves favorably. Now. The 1% are not people who had perfect timing. They are people who decided that imperfect action today was infinitely more valuable than perfect inaction tomorrow. They started before they were ready. They launched before it was polished. They spoke before they had rehearsed it perfectly. And in doing so, they joined the small, extraordinary company of people who actually did the thing rather than spending a lifetime planning to do it. Start today. Whatever it is. Not the whole thing. Not perfectly. Not with everything figured out. Just start. The fifth reason, they never learn to protect their energy. The 1% understand something that the 99% treat as optional. Energy is everything. Not the motivational poster version of energy. Not the hashtag version. The real, biological, psychological, spiritual energy that determines the quality of every thought you think, every decision you make, every action you take, every relationship you inhabit. Your energy is the raw material of your becoming. And most people, without realizing it, are hemorrhaging it in every direction simultaneously. They are giving it to arguments that don't matter. To news cycles designed to provoke outrage. To relationships that drain without replenishing. To regrets about the past that cannot be changed and anxieties about the future that haven't happened yet. To the opinions of people who will not be present at the end of their lives. To scrolling, consuming, comparing, and performing. By the time most people get to the work that actually matters, the building, the creating, the growing, the becoming, they have nothing left. They are running on empty and wondering why they can't seem to gain momentum. There was a woman named Diana who was trying to build a business while maintaining a social life, a complicated family dynamic, a news habit, 3 group chats that never stopped, and a relationship with social media that she described as love-hate but functioned more like addiction. She told her mentor, "I just don't have enough hours in the day." Her mentor looked at her steadily and said, "Diana, it's not a time problem. It's an energy problem. You have enough hours. You just don't have enough of yourself left when those hours arrive." That sentence changed Diana's life. Because it shifted the question from how do I find more time, to how do I protect more of myself. She began to be ruthless, not cruel, but ruthless, about what she allowed into her mental and emotional space. She reduced the noise. She created boundaries around her mornings. She left conversations that consistently left her depleted. She stopped consuming content that stirred anxiety without offering wisdom. And in the space that opened up, the quiet, protected, intentional space, her best work began to emerge. The Stoics called this ascesis, disciplined practice, the deliberate training of attention and energy toward what matters. Epictetus taught that the undisciplined mind is at the mercy of everything around it, blown by every wind of opinion, distracted by every passing sensation, enslaved to every fleeting impulse. The disciplined mind, the mind that has learned to protect its energy and direct it with intention, that mind becomes a force. Protect your energy like it is the most valuable resource you own. Because it is. The 6th reason, they quit at the threshold. This one is the most heartbreaking of all. Because the people I am about to describe are not lazy. They are not undisciplined. They are not lacking in desire or intention or genuine effort. They are people who quit right at the threshold of their breakthrough. There is a phenomenon in human experience that is so consistent and so universal that it might as well be a law of nature. Before every significant breakthrough, there is a period of maximum resistance. The moment just before the door opens is always the moment the door feels most impossibly heavy. The chapter just before the business becomes profitable is always the chapter where everything seems to be going wrong. The season just before the relationship deepens into something real is always the season where it feels most fragile and uncertain. The moment just before you break through your own limitations is always the moment those limitations feel most absolute. And most people, right at that threshold, right at that precise and critical moment, stop. They interpret the resistance as a sign that they are on the wrong path. They read the difficulty as evidence that this wasn't meant for them. They feel the weight of the door and conclude that it must be locked, rather than understanding that it was always going to be heavy, and that their job was never to wait for it to become light. Their job was to push. Let me tell you about a farmer named Isaac. Isaac drilled for water on his land for 3 years. Dry season after dry season. His neighbors told him to stop. His family questioned his sanity. The evidence, hole after empty hole, season after empty season, seemed overwhelming in its clarity. There is no water here. Stop. But Isaac had done his research. He knew the geology of his land. He knew water was there. And he kept drilling. On what he had decided would be his final attempt, the last resources he had, the last energy he could muster, his drill broke through into an underground reservoir so vast that it supplied his land and 3 neighboring farms for the next 40 years. He was 17 feet away from water for 3 years. 17 feet. How many people reading this are 17 feet from their breakthrough, and are about to stop drilling? The 1% have learned, through study, through experience, through the testimony of everyone who has ever achieved anything significant, that the threshold is not a stop sign. It is a test. And the test is simply this: do you want it enough to keep going when everything is telling you to quit? If the answer is yes, keep going. Your water is there. What the 1% do differently, the daily architecture. Now I want to give you something concrete. Because philosophy without application is just entertainment. The 1% are not mythological creatures. They are not built from different material than the rest of us. They do not have access to secrets hidden from ordinary people. What they have is a daily architecture, a structure of habits, decisions, and disciplines that compound over time into an extraordinary life. Let me break it down. They start before they feel like it. Motivation is a feeling. And feelings are weather, they change constantly, they are influenced by 100 variables outside your control, and they are completely unreliable as a foundation for consistent action. The 1% do not wait to feel motivated. They have learned that action precedes motivation, not the other way around. They start the work. And in the starting, the feeling follows. Every single morning, they make the choice before the feeling arrives. Before the resistance has a chance to build a case. Before comfort has a chance to make its argument. They simply begin. They embrace boredom. This one surprises people. But it is one of the most important distinguishing characteristics of people who achieve at the highest level. Excellence is boring. Not in the result is extraordinary. But in the process. The process is repetitive, unglamorous, and deeply, profoundly ordinary. The elite athlete does the same drills they've done 10,000 times before. The master writer rewrites the same paragraph for the 5th hour. The exceptional entrepreneur reviews the same metrics for the 100th consecutive morning. They do not do these things because they are thrilling. They do them because they understand that mastery is built in the boring repetitions, in the quiet, unfilmed, unapplauded hours of showing up and doing the work when there is nothing exciting about it. The 99% are always looking for a newer, more exciting approach. They hop from method to method, strategy to strategy, looking for the thing that will make the process feel as good as the result. The 1% stay the course. They embrace the boredom. They find meaning not in the excitement of the moment but in the integrity of the consistency. They invest in their inner world. The 1% understand something that consumer culture actively tries to make you forget: the outer life is always a reflection of the inner one. You cannot build an extraordinary external life from a neglected internal foundation. You cannot sustain high-level performance from an unexamined mind. You cannot make consistently good decisions from a place of unprocessed emotion, unexamined belief, and unaddressed fear. So the 1% invest. In solitude. In reflection. In reading, not just for information, but for wisdom. In the kind of honest self-examination that most people spend their whole lives avoiding because it is uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world at the time, spent significant portions of every day in quiet self-examination. Writing in his private journals. Questioning his own motives. Holding himself to standards that no external authority was enforcing. He didn't do this because he had to. They choose long-term over short-term. Every time. This is perhaps the single most consistent characteristic of the 1%. They have developed, through practice, through discipline, through the repeated and painful experience of watching short-term choices create long-term costs, the ability to delay gratification in service of something larger. They choose the difficult conversation now over the resentment later. They choose the disciplined morning now over the regret later. They choose the investment in growth now over the stagnation later. They choose the honest path now over the convenient one, because they have learned, with bone-deep certainty, that the convenient path always extracts its price eventually. And they have decided, firmly, finally, irrevocably, that they are not willing to pay that price. I want to speak to the part of you that knows. The part that has always known. That you are more than this. That your life has more in it than what you have allowed to emerge so far. That the version of you that you catch glimpses of in quiet moments, the disciplined one, the courageous one, the fully alive one, is not a fantasy. It is a calling. And it is calling you right now. Not someday. Now. The Stoics believed with complete conviction that every human being is born with a specific capacity for excellence, what they called a rate. And they believed, with equal conviction, that failing to pursue that excellence was not humility. It was a tragedy. Because your potential does not belong only to you. Your becoming is not a private matter. The person you are capable of being has ripple effects, on your family, your community, the people whose lives intersect with yours in ways you will never fully be able to map. When you shrink, they feel it. When you grow, they feel that too. Your becoming is an act of service. So become. Not perfectly. Not all at once. Not without fear or failure or the occasional spectacular setback. But deliberately. Intentionally. With the full, undefended, courageous commitment of someone who has finally decided that the 99% is no longer an acceptable address. Start today. With one decision. One discipline. One honest step in the direction of the person you were always capable of being. The 1% is not a destination. It is a daily choice. And you can make that choice right. Subscribe to the Stoic Path. Not later. Not after the next video. Right now. Because this is what we do here, every single week. We have the conversations that most content is too afraid to have. We go deep into the philosophy, the psychology, the real human experience of becoming who you were always meant to be. We do not do surface level here. We do not do empty motivation. We do not do the kind of inspiration that fades by the time you reach the parking lot. We do the work. The real, honest, philosophically grounded, life-changing work. And if you are serious, if something in you is genuinely ready to stop being almost and start being fully, then this is your community. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications. Share this video with someone in your life who is standing at a crossroads right now, someone who needs to hear that the 1% is not reserved for other people. It is available to anyone willing to choose it. Every single day.